Hello, my name is James Short, course EDUF 7116, and this is my final video presentation on what is the relationship between collaborative classrooms and the seclusion classrooms for students with dyslexia. All right, this will be an excerpt for my final research paper, which will be turned in on July 31st. All right, this data can be found in my literature review. All right. All right. Dyslexia. Dyslexia is a common developmental disorder that mainly affects reading and spelling. It's indicated by Nicholson and Fawcett in 2008. All right. There is an increasing evidence that students with dyslexia are associated with lifelong difficulty in some academic areas and are at a higher risk of negative life outcomes such as school dropout, juvenile delinquency, unemployment, social isolation, and depression. And this was through research indicated by Firth, Friedenberg, and Stieg and Bond in 2013. All right, 2007 research. In addition, according to the International Dyslexia Association in 2007, current studies showed that 15 to 20% of the world's population had a reading disability. Out of these individuals, 85% suffer from dyslexia. Additional research is necessary to investigate how parents, professionals, and adolescents can work together in partnership to implement, plan, and evaluate academic and effective interventions for students with dyslexia. All right. Listed here are some of the educational system constraints. All right. 1. There's limited knowledge about dyslexia. 2. There are limited professional development courses for teachers of students with dyslexia. 3. There's a lack of qualified teachers. And research shows that 90% of children with dyslexia can be educated in regular, inclusive classroom settings. All right, once again, this was through a 2007 survey. All right, identification. 60% of parents surveyed stated that their child was diagnosed before secondary school. 26% stated the school was the first to identify a problem. 55% said the teachers failed to recognize a problem with their child's development. Almost 2/3 felt that dyslexia was not recognized across the system. And only 40% said that their school had a trained teacher to support dyslexic students. All right, some common signs that are commonly associated with students with dyslexia. Letter reversals. Word reversals. They may have difficulty learning how to tell time. They may oftentimes use an awkward pencil grip. Oftentimes they are slow to learn new material. Oftentimes they rely heavily on memorizing without understanding. And that they are impulsive and prone to accidents. These are common signs commonly associated with students with dyslexia. All right. Ways to spot dyslexia within the classroom. Does he or she skip punctuation cues? Does he or she mix lowercase and uppercase letters? Does he or she have a problem with oral language? Does he or she mix manuscript and cursive writing? Research shows dyslexic students may work 5 to 6 times slower than non-dyslexic students. In math, does he or she operate from left to right when opposite directions are asked for? All right, collaborative classrooms and dyslexia. Students with dyslexia in collaborative classrooms will be more likely to demonstrate proficiency in reading comprehension than students in non-collaborative classrooms. Some collaborative strategies for students with dyslexia. All right, both teachers, and by both teachers I mean a general education teacher who specializes in the academic content material, and a special education teacher who specializes in educating students with disabilities. In this case, it will be a teacher who specializes in students with dyslexia. So both teachers providing visual information. We have to remember that dyslexic learners are visual thinkers. So a collaborative strategy would be both teachers including diagrams and an abundance of flow charts and flow pictures. You want to limit distractions and distracting sounds. You want to make sure that both teachers repeat themselves often. All right. Both teachers, make sure both teachers engage the student in open-ended questions. And you also want to make sure that you engage the students in open-ended questions with one another in an attempt to strengthen their verbal skills. All right. You want to have a repeated hands-on approach in every subject. And you want to practice repetition, so additional practice. All right, these are collaborative strategies for students with dyslexia. All right, some suggested accommodations for students with dyslexia. You want to make sure that you maintain a daily routine, provide a copy of the lecture notes, use step-by-step instructions, place the students with dyslexia as close to the teacher as you possibly can. But for a larger classroom, you want to make sure the teacher, both teachers circulate the classroom and keep all the students actively involved. You want to use cues to denote important facts. You want to display work samples around the classroom. And you want to use assignment substitution or adjustments. And for example, if the student is asked to complete an oral assignment, that assignment can be modified to where it can be broken down to where they can either administer that or to where they can submit that assignment via online, whether they can also submit that assignment to a teacher in a one-on-one basis. They can provide the teacher with any type of ideas to show that they have academic proficiency and whenever the content material is required. All right. A 2015 research experiment. 36 dyslexic students participated in this experiment. 18 students, grades 10th and 11th, were placed in a collaborative classroom setting. 18 were left in a seclusion classroom with one special education teacher and one paraprofessional. All right. In the collaborative classroom setting, there was a general education teacher and there was a trained special education teacher. Over the course of 9 months, the students were given tests to measure academic proficiency. All right, and this is as described in our text is validity coefficients. All right, all of these tests consisted of the same content material. However, the collaborative classroom consisted of teaching strategies from both educators. All right. For this research, purpose of sampling was utilized. And this is when the researcher specifies the characteristics of the population of interest and locates individuals with those characteristics. In this case, those students would be the students with dyslexia. All right. And validity coefficient is a correlation coefficient that is computed to provide validity evidence. In this case, the correlation between test scores and criterion scores. All right, correlation. The aim in this study was to integrate the positive and negative correlation between the independent variables, the collaboration, and the dependent variables, the academic proficiency. All right. This research will then lead to more in-depth research questions that will lead to the development of influential theories within educating students with dyslexia. All right. Data analysis. All right. So these are the results from the 9 months of tests for students with dyslexia within the seclusion classroom setting and the collaborative classroom setting. All right. The students in the collaborative classroom setting are indicated by the blue line, and the students in the seclusive classroom setting are indicated by the red line. All right. The vertical axis indicates the grades, and the horizontal axis indicates the 9-month time frame for the students. So once again, in this line graph, the blue line represents the collaborative students and their grades over a 9-month period, and the red line indicates the students with dyslexia in the seclusive classroom setting over the 9-month period. And they were given the exact same test, and even though both students' grades increased over those 9 months, you can see there was a stronger correlation for those students in the collaborative classroom setting, the blue line, as opposed to their counterparts, the students with dyslexia, and the seclusive classroom setting, which is on the bottom, and the red in the red line. All right. So line 1, the blue line, is students with dyslexia who received education in the collaborative classroom setting, over the students indicated in the red line. Those were students with dyslexia and who received education in the seclusion classroom. All right. Some strategies used in this research by all teachers in the collaborative classroom setting as well as the seclusion classroom setting. All right. In the collaborative classroom setting, the strategies used by the teachers were parallel teaching, which was when the class was divided in half as both teachers covered the same content material, and team teaching, in which both teachers delivered the same content material simultaneously. All right, in the seclusion classroom setting, the types of teaching strategies used was coaching style, group style teaching, and lecture style teaching. A survey stated many pros and cons to these seclusion classroom setting teaching strategies, which was indicated through a qualitative survey. And this was an in-depth survey given to the parents and students receiving seclusion teaching. All right, with a total of 40 surveys, 70% stated the cons to the seclusion teaching strategies were the following. They stated that lecture style teaching limited interaction with the teacher. They stated that coaching style teaching was difficult to accommodate individual needs in a larger classroom. And they stated that group style teaching, the teacher was more of a consultant and less of an authority figure. All right. Homogeneous sample selection. For intensive study purposes, a group of 7 students, which was the focus group, received in-depth qualitative questionnaires regarding their outlook of collaborative teaching. After 90 minutes of discussion, the facilitator determined the students' top 3 reasons for collaborative classrooms were that it reduced negative stigma from seclusion or pull-out classes, teaching could be individualized and instructions were specialized to meet the needs of students with disability, and when teachers role played throughout the lessons, that the students received a better understanding of the content material through active engagement. All right. However, we must consider extraneous variables when breaking down data from research. All right. And extraneous variables is any variable other than the independent variable, which in this case is the collaborative teaching, that might influence the dependent variable, which in this case is the academic growth or academic proficiency. So here I've stated the extraneous variables that could have affected the research results. And in parentheses next to these variables, I have a capital C, which stands for categorical variables, or a letter Q, which indicates that it is a quantitative variable. And a quantitative variable is a variable that varies in degree or amount. And a categorical variable is a variable that varies in type or kind. All right, so these are just a couple of extraneous variables that could have affected the research results. All right, teaching style, which is a categorical variable. Classroom size, quantitative variable. We must take into consideration both all of the students' present level of performance that can be measured, so that is a quantitative variable. All right, and we must take into consideration the classroom and school environment of the students, and that is a type, so that is a categorical variable. All right. Outcome validity. This refers to the ability to generalize the results across different but related dependent variables. This refers to the extent to which the independent variable influences a number of related outcome measures. Using several outcome measures strengthens validity. To generalize across populations, the researchers must include related dependent variables within the study. All right, once again, using several outcome measures will strengthen the research validity. All right, so for this research, examples of outcome validity. All right, each parent, 72 parents, were given a quantitative 5-point scale survey measuring their opinion on the differing teaching strategies. In addition, the researcher compared the examined correlating data, the scores, between each dependent and independent variable that was asked on the survey. All right, so not only did they look at the responses, they also measured those responses to strengthen the validity. They also matched up the responses with the students' scores. So question number 1, and once again, it was a 5-point scale, with 1 being the lowest, strongly disagree, to number 5, strongly agree. So question number 1, my child's grades suffered from being in a seclusion classroom setting. All right, the grade suffered would be the dependent variable, and in an inclusion classroom setting, that would be the independent variable. All right, having 2 trained teachers would benefit my child's academic performance more positively. The teacher strategies, independent variable, were best for my child's academic growth, dependent variable. All right, and the last question was, students with dyslexia have less academic limitations in a collaborative setting as opposed to a seclusion setting. All right. These are examples of outcome validity, including this into one's research would strengthen the validity. All right, results. From data analysis, in-depth interviews, and questionnaires from parents and students, it was found that students with dyslexia benefited greatly from collaborative classroom with 2 qualified teachers. All right, findings. Out of all the students and the parents that were interviewed, 86% of the students in a collaborative classroom setting showed a positive correlation with their teaching strategies and their academic grades and progressions, as opposed to only 14% of students in a seclusion classroom setting showing a positive correlation between their teaching strategies and their grades. So 86% of the students in a collaborative classroom setting showed a positive correlation, as opposed to 14% of students in the seclusion classroom setting showing a positive correlation with their teaching strategies and their academic performance. So from these findings, we can make a general statement that students with dyslexia who receive education in a collaborative classroom setting are at a higher rate of receiving higher academic performances as opposed to students with dyslexia in a seclusion classroom setting. All right. So that, with those findings, that will summarize my final presentation. Once again, this will be an excerpt from my final paper presentation due on the 31st. All right. And my name is James Short, course EDUF 7116. And the title of this presentation is, what is the relationship between collaborative classrooms and seclusion classrooms for students with dyslexia? I hope you enjoyed this presentation, and thank you for your time.